This podcast is available on our website, zipsportsmedia.com, and from all good podcast providers. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to a brand new episode of a brand new season of A Game of Two Halves. I'm your host, Sean Watson. Joining me on the line from Southport is Kieron Dobson. Kieron, welcome back. Thanks for coming along. How are you doing?
I'm good. Not as good now. You've just given away my location.
Yeah, for all your fans.
Game of Two Halves fans swarming me now. Yeah, no, I'm good. It's sunny Southport today, to be fair. This is the earliest I've been up for a little while, so feeling the effect, but things I do for the podcast, for the fans.
Yeah, it's greatly appreciated, as always, the trouble you go to get yourself on this show.
Yeah, on furlough for 7 months, we've done about one podcast. So, yeah.
Not great. Not going too well. Are you still on furlough? Still?
Yeah, till the end of October. Pretty hopeful I'll be put on that new scheme from then, but who knows? We'll see what happens.
Take it as it comes. 7 months of furlough. I mean, 2020 has been a bad year, but it's not been horrific for you, has it? Let's be honest.
Personal favourite.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for coming along for season 3. We tried to get a couple of episodes in the can prior to this, but it didn't quite come off. A few technical glitches, but here we are for the first episode. So thank you for coming along, and thank you for everybody listening and watching. We're going to get right back into the same format as we have done for the past 2 seasons. Anybody who has listened to us previously will know that it's called A Game of Two Halves for a reason. We tend to go for one topic in the first half and then drift on to Manchester United related stuff in the second. And this year is going to be no different. We'll have a few exceptions, a few bonus podcasts, I'm sure, where we do drift away from that general rule. But generally, that's going to be the format. So strap yourselves in and let's get underway. The first half is going to be general Premier League topics and wrap up and stuff like that. What we've seen from the first 3 game weeks of the season. It's more of the same in the sense that Liverpool are back top of the pile or just behind Everton, I think it is.
On Leicester.
On Leicester, yeah. So, but in terms of 3 out of 3 wins, you know, Everton and Leicester probably won't stick around. Liverpool probably will. Newly promoted Fulham prop up the table in 20th after losing 3 out of 3, conceding 10 goals. Not a great start. United and City have played a game less than everybody else, but they've won 1, lost 1 each. So mixed start for them. Kieron, where do you want to start? What do you want to pick out as some of the talking points in the first 3 weeks?
Just get it out of the way. I think you mentioned Liverpool. I know, like you say, like we said, Leicester and Everton both ahead of them in the table. But I think looking at the form chart, they've beaten Chelsea away and now Arsenal at home last night. So they've had the most impressive start. I know they had the struggle against Leeds, but I think a lot of teams will struggle against Leeds the same way Liverpool did on that opening day. But they got through it and they look very fresh at the minute. I think that's the thing I would say is the theme of the opening 3 game weeks is that the teams that didn't have a lot to play for at the end of last season and were able to sort of rest up a little bit and didn't have games in Europe to contend with, they've started very well and they look very fresh. And the teams that haven't, United, City, Chelsea, Spurs, Wolves, all dropping points in the first few weeks. So hopefully that levels itself out as a United fan later on in the season. But as it stands, I'm concerned that and City should be too, because I think we accept they're the 2 best teams in the league. You don't want to drop too many points in this period. You want to try and drum out a few easy wins or grind out a few 3 points here and there. So but as it stands, Liverpool look pretty good.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I was ready to say that City had a decent start. Once they went 1-0 up against Leicester, unbelievable strike, by the way. Did you see it from Mahrez? Yeah. Some goal. But once they'd gone 1-0 up, I was ready to say that's a good start. Beating Leicester, beating Wolves away after, not much of a pre-season. That's not bad. But, well, tables have turned a little bit now, haven't they? In terms of, a 5-2 thrashing. All of a sudden, people are saying, well, where did he go from here? Is it a bit of a crisis for Guardiola? Can he get his defence sorted out? He's got a few injuries. What did you make of the hiding they got on Sunday at the hands of Leicester?
Again, I reserve a little bit. I'm not going to go too heavy on them because I do think that, again, there is a pattern. All the teams that played a lot and had something to play for at the end of last season are struggling at the moment. City were one of them. I know they were knocked out of the Champions League early and they didn't really have a chance for the Premier League, but it stands to reason that they've maybe not be as fresh as the other teams around them. But with that said, I think I'm like you. I was, as a United fan, I was hopeful City would be better this year. I can't really stand the idea of Liverpool winning back-to-back titles, and so I think from any neutral who doesn't want Liverpool to win the league, they'll be a little bit disappointed because City really shouldn't have too many excuses because Leicester were fighting for the top four as well last year with injuries, some of which they still got, and they lost Chilwell and.
Yeah, Maddison was injured
They lost
for the last 10 minutes.
5-2 at home. Exactly. So I think as well, the thing to say about with City, I think this is potential. I know it's stupid to say it's two games in for them. I do think it is potential meltdown time because Pep and Rodri both reacted badly to the loss, saying that only one team came to play football. Well, that team lost 5-2 at home, so they didn't do a very good job of it. And I think the other thing is they have spent money again this summer, despite whether people think they should have or been able to with the investigation into them that took place last summer. I say investigation, but they spent a lot of money. They brought in Ake, they brought in Torres. Rodri's now another year in, should be looking better. That defence is no better to me. I don't think Ake was a smart signing at all. I understood it if it was a backup for Laporte, but he started that game. They lost 5-2. Garcia, rumours that he's going to be going back to Barcelona, but he had a bad game. I'm struggling to see the upside with that defence.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. And, like you say, they've spent money. They've got a vast squad to begin with. We've said on this programme that they've got two starting 11s really that could win and beat any team in the league on paper. All right, yeah, injuries decimate that a little bit, but like you say, Leicester weren't fully fit. They had the first choice fullbacks. One had left the club, one's still injured. So that's a start. Johnny Evans was barely fit. I think he came off halfway through.
Hobbled off, didn't he?
Yeah. And Maddison's not there, or he was there, but he came off the bench. That was a second-rate Leicester team as well. So I don't think City can fall back too hard on that, lack of fitness or injuries excuse. And if Rodri thinks that Leicester were negative and didn't come to play, well, Leicester need to be negative more often, right? If you score 5 at the Etihad, I don't remember a team doing that in the past 10 years. So if that's and I think that's I think that's pure arrogance for my money. Stating that a team didn't want to play just because they set up 2 banks of 4 really deep on the edge of their own box. That's the way to beat these teams. That's called tactics. That's called playing the game. If one team's, it's like a game of chess, isn't it? One team comes at you with one set of tactics, you reply with another that's going to repel them, and So I just think that's Guardiola and his players, but Guardiola himself. I think he only sees one way to play football, and anything else is a disrespect. A park the bus tactic is a bit of a disrespect to him. But I think he needs to open his eyes a little bit and recognise that teams are sussing his teams out now and knowing how to beat them.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because they said about only one team turn up to play football, but one of the Vardy goals is one of the best goals I've seen in a long time. It was absolutely stunning bit of team play. I think though, United used to say this under Van Gaal a lot. Van Gaal used to say this: only one team came to play, and I was a big advocate for Van Gaal, but it's one of those things where when you're saying it, I understand that you're saying it to defend your players, and I think that's probably where Pep's coming from. But I will say, if it's rubbing off on the players and they're making excuses, then you're probably not going to have the best time throughout the rest of the season because pretty much, I'd say 15 teams out of the Premier League are probably going to set up against City. I know we will, and then pretty much anyone in the bottom 10 will. I think the only ones that won't are maybe Leeds and Liverpool that I can think of off the top of my head. So that'll actually try and take them on.
Yeah. Spurs doing it, didn't they, a couple of years ago? And
they won't be doing it with Mourinho. That was a very different time with Poch.
No, exactly. But they got battered, didn't they? Point is, they got battered.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of teams will play that way against City this year, and they want to have a better. They want to react better to it. I think the one again, where I come down though is I think had they had Laporte starting, and if they'd gone and got a proper right centre back, and I know that they've just signed Diaz from Benfica now with Otamendi going the other way. Maybe that'll work out. But what I would say, and again, if you're a City fan, you're probably listening to us here and thinking, stop, calm down, overreaction. He's won loads of trophies. He knows what he's doing. But for me, this centre back issue is a real issue. His transfer record for centre backs is horrific. He's
Yeah, what's he spent on defenders as a whole? A lot of money.
An awful lot. And Laporte is the only one that I can think of that I would say has been a success.
Yeah.
I watched that City all or nothing after watching the Spurs one. There was a lot of talk on there from that Tixie Berg and horrible pronunciation, but he was talking about Stone's going to be one of the best centre backs in the world, but that's not worked out. Whether that's his injuries or his attitude or whatever, Pep's not improved him. Otamendi's not worked out. Garcia's still not good enough, evidently. We'll see what happens with Ake, but I think he's going to have the same issues all the other ones have. It goes, you can look at his time at Bayern as well. Boateng that they signed was, a really good player, but I remember him having some pretty bad games with Pep in the Champions League. I remember getting sat down by Messi, which, who doesn't? Yeah. But and again, Barcelona, his best team, the Puyol and Piqué, both Barcelona homegrown talent sort of given to him almost. And then later on, Mascherano came and sat and adapted, and fair enough. Similar to the way Fernandinho has in the past, but I mean, they're not good enough.
I think the Mascherano positioning worked because he had such a great team in front of him that he wasn't relied too much upon.
Defensively, they weren't asked to defend an awful lot.
No, as a United fan, we didn't get at them in the 2011 Champions League final. I thought, well, they've got Mascherano at the back. Come on, we can score goals against this team. We didn't even get close to getting at them
because we couldn't get the ball.
Because we couldn't get the ball off them. So that's covered the cracks on that front. But like you say, his defensive track record, he must have spent hundreds of millions of pounds on fullbacks alone, let alone centre backs. And like you say, Walker's okay. Walker's all right. He's pretty reliable. He doesn't do too much wrong, and he's decent going forward. But other than that, you mentioned Laporte. But other than those two, they spent money on Mendy.
They've been unlucky with Mendy in his injury, and I do wonder what would have happened if he'd been fit. But going, similar to the other defenders, Mendy's not particularly good defensively. So, I mean, there's lots of holes there. And again, they spent
I hear that a lot about defenders generally.
These days, it is more important for your fullbacks to attack for most teams. And so that's fine, but then you need to have a really good defensive midfielder. And Fernandinho has been a great defensive midfielder, but I mean, he's 32 now, maybe 33. They spent an awful lot of money on Rodri, and I'm not seeing enough from him in terms of return on investment. He wasn't convincing me on the weekend. I mean, you look at Allen at Everton, he's covering those fullbacks in the first few game weeks. Granted, we're only 3 weeks in, but he's done a really good job of covering those fullbacks. I don't see Rodri doing the same job. So I would be really concerned if I was a City fan, because you did not want to lose ground to Liverpool this early on, and you now have, and you're already chasing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on then. So what was your next topic that you had in mind that you wanted to go to?
The handball rule, I think, obviously has been the main story over the last couple of games. We've obviously seen a few controversial decisions, and a lot of managers come out and spoken about it. Even Bruce, who benefited for it at Newcastle, being the top guy he is, acknowledging that it was a farce. And
where do you stand on it?
So the thing is with it, it's harsh, and it's really harsh on defenders. But this is the rule that is used broadly in world football. It does make the decisions easy for the referee, and I can understand why, after everything that's happened over the last few years with the introduction of VAR and the now there's since VAR has come in, there's been more criticism of decisions than before. I think they've got more right decisions, but conversely, because we're now reviewing every decision, we're getting more criticism of the referees and those making the decisions. And I think that they've just tried to make it as easy as possible for referees and those reviewing with the use of the technology. But with that said, I wanted Wilson to score a penalty for my fantasy team, and I wanted Spurs to lose because I hate Jose Mourinho. And so I was delighted.
Jose. Did you not watch it? It's Jose.
Sorry, yeah. So I was delighted, but I have to say, if that was given against United, I would have felt very hard done by. I mean, there were a few questionable ones last
year. Wasn't there? But Palace, the one against Palace was given against Lindelof.
Yeah.
And, all right, so my stance on it is, I hear what you're saying about making it easier for referees, but But the opportunity to review these decisions makes it easier for referees. If you wanted to make it clear cut and have it, if it hits your hand, it's handball, great. But use that when the referee didn't have the replay to look at.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So the referee with one look can say it's hit your hand, that's handball. He's got 10 replays now. He can now take the time to analyse. Yes, it hit his hand. Was it deliberate? Was it intentional? The distance away, X, Y, Z. He doesn't need it that much clearer anymore because he's got 10 replays to look at his discretion.
Yeah.
You know.
This is the trouble, I think, with the wording that they've used in the new rule. They're talking about that natural silhouette again. And obviously, so with the dial on his hands up here, obviously he's not facing the ball. He doesn't know he's going to hit his arm. And so it shouldn't be a penalty. You know, I think ethically we'd all say that, you know, it's an unfair decision. But the referee, because they're watching it in really slow-mo, and that distorts the perception as well, because you're then watching it.
Everything looks worse in slow motion.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
And if you watch it in full speed, you can see that the defender's got absolutely no chance to get his arms out of the way. But they're not looking for that. They are looking to see if the ball is out in an unnatural, or what they call an unnatural position. But I think that the definition of that needs to be worked on, because when you're jumping, your arms go up. When you're running, your arms come up. They are natural positions. Yeah. So, I go back to the Champions League final a couple of years ago when Liverpool beat Spurs. Granted, he shouldn't have had his arm out here, but when Sissoko had his arm out there and he was pointing, it wasn't like he was blocking the ball. It was a natural thing. He was trying to warn players, and he was pointing. You can't point with your hands by your hips.
No.
Again, it was unfortunate, and it was good play from Liverpool to ping it off his arm, but I even have sympathy with that. I think.
Yeah, but they're aiming for it now, aren't they? They are trying to play for it.
Yeah, and I think that is going to happen. I mean, especially, so we've seen, obviously, we had Maguire head it onto Maupay's hand in the 98th minute or whatever it was. We've had that decision go against Spurs in the 92nd minute.
Yeah.
It is, the case now that in the last minutes of the game, if it's tight, teams will just launch the ball into the box and it'll be a case of pinball.
Yeah.
And I saw Graham Souness sort of try and rationalise this and say, look, if we looked at it today as though, it's a blank piece of paper, this is the game of football, this is how we're going to play it, and we said this is the rule, it's black and white, crystal clear, and he's making the case that we would say in the name of entertainment, it's actually good because, it leads to more drama, it's what we want to see,
Yeah.
And I would understand where he's coming from there, but I don't think we can in football really remove that context. Football is so traditional, it's so resistant to change. Any rule change, it takes 10, 15 years to actually happen from the point that it's started, there's any conversation about it. And I don't think we can just wipe away all these years where we've had a sort of common sense approach to handball, and now we're moving to this black and white zone. It doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with fans. It doesn't sit right with players or managers. So I think the right thing to do would be to scrap this rule, but it's difficult now because we played 3 games. Teams have already benefited and teams have already it's cost some teams. So how do we have to wait till the end of the season? I don't know.
I hope not.
What do you think?
No, exactly the same as you. And I don't know if you caught the Monday Night Football last night, but Carragher was saying that teams now can, shut up shop for 92 minutes, still be in the game, and like you say, just lump it forward and fluke winning a penalty. Whereas they've not offered anything in the game. They've not even looked like scoring. And even in winning the penalty, they haven't looked like scoring. It's just happened to hit somebody's hand, and all of a sudden they come away with a point or 3 points. Is that really the type of football we want? And the way teams get points, is that really what we want? For me, no, I don't think it is.
Again, I'm with you. I think it's too harsh, but. The one thing I will say, every podcast I mention that I watch basketball, hence why my body clock's screwed at the minute. They've made rule changes over the past 20 years where you can go back to, if anyone's watched that Jordan documentary, if you haven't, any listeners, I widely.
Great, isn't it?
It's
even as a non-basketball fan, it's
great TV. But again, from what I've learned from watching and following the game the last 10 years or so, they made a lot of rule changes from the 80s, which benefited attackers. So they made it, you couldn't hit the player in the paint, so to speak. So when they're going towards the basket, you couldn't make any contact with them. You can't now touch a shooting player's arm as they're taking a shot. And so it does make it easy for attackers. And
Yeah, that is what we want. We want the deck stacked towards the attacker. It's like the offside rule, the benefit of the doubt should be with the attacker. That is what we want as viewers, because we want to see goals. But it's that line, isn't it? How far do you go, and is this handball rule now just ridiculously in favour of the striker?
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was just going to say. There's a lot of people now that accept that these rule changes have led to a more entertaining game. It's a more offensive game. There's more, it's dragged in more fans, more money for the game. But I think there are still people today that rightly say that they've gone too far with it. And I think that does actually hurt the game. There are now games where people watch and they're upset when a decision goes against them because of these what seem like petty fouls. And I think the same in football. They do need to guard against this, because you don't want to get into a situation where loads of people get switched off. A lot of people, whatever we think about VAR, a lot of people have been, the game's gone about VAR. We don't want to further alienate audiences at the moment, particularly when TV money is so important, by just making the game so. Yeah, it's a step too far. I think we all agree. It's really harsh on defenders, and if a defender can't avoid giving away a penalty, then how is that fair?
Yeah,
it's not a reflection of a. You're not going to get the best team win. In many of these occasions, and it's just that it seems unfair.
It does, yeah. I absolutely agree. And I don't think it's VAR that's the problem here. Let's just make that clear. But I know what the point you're making, that we don't want anything sort of even remotely close to that, feeling that fire. But it is the laws of the game that say it. The VAR is in place to ensure that they're followed. But it's the handball law, isn't it? That's the issue with this. And VAR, I don't know about you, but I'm sort of adapting to the whole VAR being involved in football. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm not thinking, VAR again. If a decision's there to be made, it's there to be made. I'm incorporating it into how I celebrate a goal in inverted commas, but in the build-up, you look for things now that you think, VAR are going to rule that out.
Yeah.
The Rashford one, prime example, we'll get to that in more detail, but he scored the goal, and I thought, no chance VAR are getting involved here. He was in his own half and the ball was played. This is a clean goal. And that's how your mind starts to work now. I don't know about you.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've been pretty pro VAR from day one, and it had some teething issues last year, and particularly the first half of the season, particularly City fans who've been hard done by in the Champions League.
Always brings a smile to my face, that story.
Which we've mentioned before, but also at the start of that year, I think last year they won 5-0 against West Ham, but there are a few decisions that went against them due to VAR. I think that they have improved the processes. I think now that they've stopped showing the workings of VAR,
I agree.
I still think that there's probably just as many controversial decisions that everyone would debate. But I think just the fact that we're not seeing it, A, looks like it's quicker, that these decisions are happening quicker, and B, I think people are less concerned about whether they got it right.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really helping at the moment with VAR is the fact that there's no fans in the stadium, because I think the main argument was that if you're at a game, it ruins it if you then sat. And I've been at games where you are waiting for 3, 4, 5 minutes whilst the decision's made, and the crowd just go dead because there's nothing to cheer. But at the moment, everybody's watching the game on TV. I don't think anyone really minds. So it'll be interesting to see when stadiums are full again, if that ever happens, whether VAR seems as seamless as it is now. But I'm with you. I'm pro VAR. I think that it's not perfect, but nothing ever is. And I think if people are making the case that they want, it's not perfect, so don't have it.
No.
I think that we've had a lot more correct calls since its introduction. Again, there's going to be some that aren't, but I don't think it's worth throwing away the good that it has brought in just because on a couple of occasions it works against you.
Because financially they can't afford to, can they? They can't afford to.
No.
So much money riding on it. And every other sport that I can think of, barring probably golf, I think golf's the only one that doesn't really need a video referee, but virtually every sport now, tennis, cricket, rugby, they all use technology where they need to. So I don't see why football, being the highest grossing sport in the world, it shouldn't be any different, really.
And to your point, that they can't afford to, the one decision that was let down by the technology, well, obviously there were others, but one of the big ones last year was when Villa's, the goal that never was, because Hawkeye didn't work, that one got for that one goal. we've seen a lot of the teams that went down last year in Villa who stayed up. A lot of teams saying, "Well, hang on, this isn't fair." And if we got rid of all technology, that sort of thing would happen more often. And so, it's sad that didn't work on that occasion, and it really should have. But
the other thing about that, though,
go on.
You can't say that one decision was the direct reason they didn't stay up, because there were still 3, 4, 5 games. I don't know how many games, quite a few games to play after that.
Mathematically, if that ball gone in and Sheffield had won, Villa would have gone down. I hear you, I'm with you. But I can't remember who it was that finished 18th, but whoever it was last year, I think maybe Bournemouth would have felt hard done.
Bournemouth, yeah.
Yeah, and they rightly would have. I would have felt hard done by if we'd lost out on a title because of a goal that wasn't given against Liverpool, because that on one goal, the Hawkeye system wasn't working. I'd be furious. So, and again, from a financial perspective, as you say, it matters. To the fans, it matters. We want to see more right decisions, and that is what we're getting with VAR. So,
yeah, absolutely. We'll get to another incident of VAR when we get to the second half, I'm sure, where we talk about Manchester United. But for the time being, we'll leave that there. So let's do some predictions. Top 6, bottom 3. Let's start with the relegation fodder. So to start with, who in your mind finishes in the bottom 3 this year, based on the first 3 games of the season?
One, absolutely 100% definitely Fulham, rock bottom. They'll finish 20th. Whether they sack Parker or not, doesn't matter. They're finishing 20th. The squad's nowhere near good enough. I don't know if you saw last night, but the owner was actually tweeting apologies.
Did he?
He was saying that for not getting centre-backs. I feel bad for the 2 centre-backs.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, because they apparently have been trapped. They're the 2 same centre-backs that got relegated last time in the Prem, Ream and Adoy, and they're not good enough. But I feel bad for Ream and Adoy because they've been outed on public media for not being good enough. On social media for not being good enough. I think Fulham go down. I worry about Burnley because of their squad issues. I'm going to say Fulham, West Brom.
Think West Brom go down?
They've looked good, but they're conceding too many goals.
They are, but I think the promising sign is they're scoring a lot. The free scoring.
Yeah, I hear that. I still think they go down. I don't think they've got a good quality. Fulham, West Brom, and it's between Villa or Burnley. I like Deitch enough to think. I think Villa go down. Yeah. I know they've started well, but I don't. The squad by and large is the same. Watkins is a good signing by all accounts from Brentford, but I don't think that was it. I think they had defensive issues that I don't see improved.
I worry for Sheffield United, this year. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen with Ipswich, I think probably the most famous one, where Ipswich got promoted, finished 5th, got the UEFA Cup spot back when it was the UEFA Cup, and then completely fell apart the next year. And I do worry with Sheffield United a little bit, because that squad, for my money, shouldn't have finished as high up as it did last year. It did, fair play to them, but for me, I think there's an element of faking it in there. By faking it, I mean that in the best way. I know you mean, yeah. Overachieve. With the loss of Henderson, obviously coming back to United, they haven't really made any big name signings, anything to really strengthen that team. I don't see where the goals are really going to come from.
Well, they haven't scored one yet this season, and that's an issue 3 games in.
That's a real issue. And they've not exactly had a really tough start to the season.
No.
I think they've played Villa, Leeds, so it's quite easing yourself into the season. So I do worry about Sheffield United, I've got to say. I think I agree with Fulham for certain, and I think probably between Villa and West Brom. But yeah, I think Sheffield United will be an outsider to go down.
I'm with you. I did think about them. I think what it is last year, obviously they did so well, and I think a lot of it was Chris Wilder's played a completely different type of football to any team that I've ever seen promoted before, and still in the Premier League, no one really did the overlapping centre-backs thing that he did. It stands to reason that teams would have figured out different ways to play against that system now. But like you say, they've not reinforced, and Henderson is a loss. Ramsdale, I don't think, is in the same. He's not the same caliber keeper. They lack a goal scorer for sure, and they got a lot of goals out of Lundstrom last year. They're going to need to find someone that, whether it be the lad that signed from Swansea last year, who scored against us but then barely at all. McBurney.
Oh, McBurney, yeah.
Yeah, they need someone to start scoring goals. I think there's a week left in the window. If they don't find anyone, I'll worry. But I back Wilder, I think, is where I come down on that.
Yeah, good manager.
But I hear you. They definitely should be, concerned.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the top 6. I'm guessing your league winners are going to be down as Liverpool, same as me.
They probably are, but I do think it will be tight. I think what we were saying earlier about City's squad will matter this season. I know that Liverpool have had the benefit of having the extra sort of time to prepare for this season, and they didn't have the run in Europe that everyone else had last year in lockdown. But the squad, whilst it is a lot better now, they've made the signs of Thiago and Jota, City's is still thicker, and I think that when we're playing in a season that we've lost 5 weeks and roughly the same amount of games are going to be played, I think that
is true
later on. So maybe do I go City? Is this brave and bold?
Ooh, all right. Well,
no. Do you know what? Liverpool got the best player in the league, so
Thiago. They have now, yeah.
Salah.
Yeah, I can't see past Liverpool.
I'm going to say Liverpool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same team as last year, plus the best midfielder in Europe for my money, Thiago, or at least he's up there. I think he's won the league the last 10 of 11 seasons or something stupid. And I just think he's a phenomenal player.
He's a top quality player.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So that addition, for me, they haven't regressed. They've only progressed. City don't look the side they were or have been. They weren't really the side last year, but they don't look like they've improved any on it just yet. Maybe I'm calling that one too early, but for me, I can't see anything other than Liverpool. So give us your top 4 then. So Liverpool 1.
So I've got no surprise to hear. I've got City second. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, because I think it is just a case of who are the best of the rest, similar to last year. But obviously there's been a bit of an arms race this summer for transfers. Chelsea spent a lot of money. Second season Mourinho. But I'm going to probably surprise people here in my pick. I think Arsenal are going to get third.
Really? Okay. That's interesting. They do look a good team now.
Yeah. Arteta's done a really good job. They look a lot more solid. They look a completely different team in terms of like the mentality and their approach to the game. A lot more street smart. They won the first 2 games. Admittedly, I mean, they should have. And there's no shame to losing to Liverpool. And had the game gone another way last night, they could have won.
They could have done.
I think
what's the chances.
I think what's going to matter is that I think Arteta will manage the squad well, and they have brought in a number of players, and I think that they'll benefit from a couple of players. I think when Martinelli comes back from injury, he'll help out. They'll have a lot of options. They've got Willian, Pepe, and again, none of them are that good, but they've got lots of Willian, Pepe, Saka, Martinelli will be back. Aubameyang, Lacazette. They can rotate and get 3 of them for each game. They've got a lot of options in defence now with Saliba coming in and Gabriel. So I think that they'll manage the season pretty well. I think they're not playing in Europe this year either.
No, they missed Europe League.
I think it's going to be a massive help for the teams this year, because we've seen fatigue's going to play a big part with this new style of football. And I think they'll benefit as well from not having fans in the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, expectations less, isn't it, I suppose?
I think Arsenal third. I think United will get 4th. And then I think Chelsea 5th, Spurs 6th.
Okay.
We'll talk about United in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. So my top, I'll list my top 6. So City second. I'm gonna go United third, Chelsea 4th, Arsenal 5th, Spurs 6th.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar.
No,
I'm maybe a bit too high on Arsenal, but
no, we'll see. I just think the gap they've got to bridge between last year and this is still it's a gulf, isn't it? Because they weren't close. They weren't particularly close last year.
But I think that's because of the time they had under Emery. When Arteta came in, the form improved dramatically. The squad's improved now. He's had more time with them. And again, I go back to the point that they've not got Europe this year. I think that's all going to come together to really give them that push that they need.
Yeah.
And again, we'll talk about United in the second half, but Mourinho will improve. But I talk about him a lot, but they'll have a better second season under him. They've made a few, Bale coming in for the 5 games he's fit will help. Son and
5
Kane.
games.
Well, whatever. Everyone's saying, Son, Kane and Bale best attack in the league. Well, they'll play about 3 games together all season, so I'm not too worried about that. Son, if they keep Son and Kane fit, they got a chance. Again, I don't love the sign of Højbjerg, but he's definitely going to improve them in the sense that he gives them another body in midfield, because I think they played skip a bit too much last year.
Yeah.
And
it is a bit lightweight, that Spurs midfield.
It's not very good, and they've got a lot of holes, but I do think that over the course of the year he'll get enough results. Next year's when it'll all come crashing down for him. I know it's typical 3 seasons. I just think they'll be okay this year, and next year will be trouble. Chelsea, good squad now on paper, but I do think they are going to really struggle to make everything gel so soon. There's a lot of changes and an inexperienced manager.
Early season, I think they'll probably stutter and start a little bit, but I think once they get Ziyech into the team, Werner gets into gear, Pulisic, Havertz, they're 4 top-class players. And I think once they it might take 10, 15 games from to all get fully fit and learn how to play with each other, but I think once they do, I think they'll start laying down a bit of a marker and getting some serious points on the board.
It's the defence still.
Yeah.
And they've invested well. I'm not going to criticise any of their moves, and I know Chilwell's still to come in after they've signed him, but Thiago Silva, I was probably a bit too complimentary of him when they signed him. I'm now, that first game, I know it's only 1 game, he's going to take time, but he's 35 years old. Is he really going to adapt to this level? I really dislike Christensen just because there's still this. If I'm going to go on my soapbox about this one, if he was black, the pundits and the commentators would have written him off long ago. He's not good enough in any area of the game. And they've been quick to write off Tamori, they've been quick to write off Zuma, but Christensen gets this free pass, and I can't understand it. He's awful. I see nothing in him.
I actually quite rate Tamori as well. I think he's a decent centre-back.
Tamori looks like, Chelsea's form dropped right off when they stopped playing him. I'm not saying that he's definitely he's the future of football, but he got into an England squad, I think, in that time. Everton are after him. Ancelotti's not a mug. No. I see nothing in Christensen. Thiago, the talk is that they're going to have Thiago try and rub off on Christensen. Well, I'm telling you now, that's
too late to start learning in your career.
No, and it's a waste of time because he's never going to be good enough. Zumas and Rudiger are the 2 best centre-backs, but they're both just okay.
Yeah.
Did you see gone. Alonso's not good enough defensively, and Reece James is good going forward, but bad defensively.
Did you see the tweet on over the weekend about Dave and Alex at Glastonbury is still the best Thiago Silva performance on British soil? Brilliant.
Yeah.
And it has to be said, it's definitely true at this stage. Let's talk Everton's signings just quickly. They've made some waves, haven't they, in the transfer market this summer?
Yeah, I think we dedicate more time to them and potentially Leeds next week. But 2 really good starts. Everton. I was going to say about them. They are my second team, if I'm being completely honest. People might have figured out over the podcast of, the last few years. But I've got a lot of family that are Everton fans. They're always, they hate Liverpool too. So that this is the best manager they've had in the Premier League era, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think this might be the best squad they've had. I think they'll do really well this year. They've got Digne, Coleman, 2 really good fullbacks. They're not bad at centre back. The keeper is bad. But,
no getting around that one.
Really isn't. But Alan, as I said earlier, really, Digne and Coleman are really good going forward. Alan's doing a really good job of covering, as is Decore, who
good signing that.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I think his first year in the Premier League, I probably thought he was a bit overrated because I think a lot of people were hyping him up. He had a few goals, and I was thinking, Watford had this with Capoue the year before.
Yeah.
But I remember last year, I know they went down last year, but I remember there was a game where they ground out a win, and people don't like Troy Deeney. I seem to think he's all right, but I remember him saying after the game that Decore got him through that, and people didn't realise, he's playing through an injury. He was hobbling around everywhere. He had loads of injection before the game.
Could have been the Arsenal game when Arsenal were 2-0 up.
I think you might be right, yeah. I got a lot of time for Decore, and then obviously James Rodriguez sitting in that point position. With the 2 fullbacks bombing form, with Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, up front, they're gonna do well this year.
Calvert-Lewin's impressing me no end. And, former Stalybridge Celtic lad as well. I don't know if you knew that, but
no, I did. Yeah. I got
nice to see.
No, he seems like a really, really good guy as well. He's come on leaps and bounds under Ancelotti. I think he's shown promise under Silva that this is a different. His heading, he's seen a lot more headed goals. Obviously,
Yeah.
good at crossing, but I mean, he's getting into the right positions. He's the right poacher, and again, good Bob Mortimer fan. I got a lot of time for him. Yeah, he loves train guy.
Oh, good to know. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
No, exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's just about it then for part one, I think. Don't think we've got anything else left to cover. So, viewers and listeners of this show on the regular will know that at this stage we switch gears a little bit and go into the second half where we talk more exclusively about Manchester United. So, we're going to do that now. We're going to transition it right here. Normally, I'd cut it if we were in a podcast, a little musical interlude, but because it's video, we're going to keep running, keep it flowing, and we're going to enter into part two. So, let's talk about Manchester United's start to the season, Kieran. Let's talk about their transfer window. So far, there's still time to go, of course. 3-1 defeat at home to Palace. Let's start the defeat to Palace. 3-1 at home, opening day of the season. What did you make of it?
Out of sorts. The lack of pre-season's really hurt us.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before, but the teams that I've played had something to play for last year, and Europe, and particularly us because we went to the latter stages. We only had one pre-season game, and you can see it. It's clear as day. Bruno's not looked himself. Pogba's had COVID, doesn't look anywhere near himself. The defenders. We'll talk about the defenders in a moment.
We need a subsection of its own for the defence.
Not good enough, and going forward, we look a bit disjointed at the moment. So again, I think the lack of pre-season's really hurt us. So yeah, that's my take. I think we were the best team in lockdown, and Ollie threw everything at it, and we've only signed one player, so I'm not too surprised that we've had a slow start. But again, it was a bad performance against Palace. We all know how Palace are going to set up against United at Old Trafford.
They beat us last year as well, if I remember right.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
it was, wasn't it?
The second or third game week. Yeah, but and it was probably in the same way. But yeah, I mean, there are no excuses. I think I'm disappointed to see. I would like to have thought that we would have known we were going to struggle for fitness and that we would have found a way around it and we would have maybe tried to get more game time in. But I don't know. I'm not a sports scientist. Maybe they just had to take the break and hope that we could build up our match fitness in the early stages and grind out a few results as we did against Brighton. But yeah.
Especially being in the Champions League as well. I think they probably did just have to get the miles back in the legs a little bit.
Yeah. What concerns me again, I have to say, like I said earlier, what concerns me is that this is going to be a condensed season. There's not a lot of time to drop too many points, and we're going to have to clearly build our match fitness up throughout these first few weeks. We've got, the games come thick and fast. We've got Spurs on the weekend after another game at Brighton midweek in the Carabao Cup. So we've got to really grind out a few results, because if we drop too many points, we could fall behind your Arsenals and maybe Everton's and Leicester.
Would you take an early exit from the League Cup at this stage? Would you be overly bothered about it?
Oh, I want to win every tournament we're in, but I go back to what I've said.
It doesn't interest me. Winning the League Cup for me, I've been there and done that. I've seen that. It doesn't.
I don't think I've said this on the pod, but and I've said it for years that we should scrap the League Cup. I know it makes some money for some of the lower league teams, but it's just not worth it for the drain it has on teams in the lower leagues and the Premier League. And I think particularly this season, with everything going on, it's clearly on the priority list at the bottom for pretty much every club. So, and I know that the TV money is going to matter, but I just think because we're condensing a big season into a tighter season without a proper pre-season beforehand, and that we still don't know that if the second wave does occur, we might have to freeze games again.
Yeah,
I just don't see the value in having it. I'm not going to ever have too much sympathy for Spurs, but you look at they've got the Europa League qualification games, the Carabao Cup games, and the Premier League games at the start of the season. They've got absolutely no chance, really.
I think they're playing Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then is it Sunday again against us? So
yeah, and they're not going to scrap the Europa League. They're not going to scrap the FA Cup. No. Obviously, the Champions League and Premier League priority. They should not be playing this tournament. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if we went out. But then, with that said, maybe again from United's perspective, maybe it's better to stay in and get minutes for more players. I don't know.
Yeah, you can flip it both ways, I suppose. Okay, so let's talk about Saturday's win against Brighton. If you want to move on to that just quickly.
it was a fun win in the end.
Yeah, cracking game of football.
For 90 minutes, 95 minutes, it was awful. For the neutral, great, but for a United fan, we were really poor and it was difficult to watch. But who doesn't love winning after full time?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You text me. I've never won after full time before, so it's nice, nice feeling. I text you at half time, I think, in the Brighton game, saying this is awful, and you said you're going to save your views for the podcast. So here we are, Kieran. Give us your lowdown.
I just didn't want to get dragged into the chat because I think at the moment there's quite a lot of negativity around United, and I understand it. People want to see transfers. We're a rich club. We clearly, we were close. So we've got into the Champions League now. People want to see us compete in the Champions League. They want to see us go up a level and fight for the Premier League title. And I understand why everyone's like, we need to make transfers because there are gaping holes in this squad. But what I want to say is that whilst all that is true, and whilst because of the unique circumstances of this particular season, with the fixture congestion, it is going to be important to have players coming because of the, going to need more bodies. Ollie, we brought in Bruno. We were the form team last year after he came in, and we looked really good. And we've now had more time where the incoming players, Wan-Bissaka and Maguire, have been at the club, established themselves. Rashford and Martial look at home now, and Greenwood's coming on. We definitely need to sign players. I completely get it, but I'm just not on board with this. If we don't sign players, forget it. Because I think we still will be in the fight. Again, we're going to have problems this year with the squad, but I'm just not on board with this. United are shit, bin the club, sack Ollie, all this. For me, it's a bit too much. And then,
for sure.
And that's where I am. I just didn't want to get into any of that chat.
And that wasn't the point. Really,
no, I know.
I was making. For me, the problem was literally that it wasn't even to do with legs. It was to do with we couldn't create a chance. We couldn't string 5 passes together. That, to me, that was the worrying part.
Yeah, but I do think that, we saw at the end of last year that we're not incapable of doing either of those two things.
No.
But I do just think that it is just the case that the squad's thin, the squad's unfit, and it's going to take time. We will improve, but again, that's not to say that we don't need to make signs. I think what concerned me the most, or would have concerned me the most, was the defence. I know we obviously want to talk about that. Yeah. The positives are that this is a better defence than we've had for a long time. Maguire, I don't love him. I've said on the podcast I didn't want to sign for 80 million when we had Mourinho. I said it again when we actually signed him. But he has improved us because aerially he's great.
Yeah.
Wan-Bissaka.
Well, won us the penalty, didn't he? Ultimately.
Yeah. He could do more in attacking corners, to be fair. But again,
I always said that. I think it took him till, was it Chelsea away where he scored his first goal? 6-7 months in, and I was saying for the 6-7 months before that, we need more from you from corners. We've seen it. We've seen it with England. We've seen it with Leicester. It needs to happen.
What I would say with that is he developed this later in his game. Leicester and England, he's got a good record, but before that, he hasn't in League One and at Hull. And in the early stage of his Leicester career, it wasn't as good. It's something he's developed later on. So it stands to reason that it would take time to settle out. And we've now actually got a good corner taker in Bruno. I think we were probably the worst corner taking team before we signed Bruno by a country mile. Yeah. Pay homage to the days of Phil Jones taking corners under Van Gaal. But I
miss those days.
Yeah, who doesn't? I would say about the defence is that so Maguire has improved us. He's not. I still don't think he's great, but he's good centre back. Wan-Bissaka's improved us defensively. Yeah. Question marks over his game going forward, but what I would say is Wan-Bissaka was poor in his first game in the Premier League. Maguire and Lindelof didn't look good, neither did Shaw defensively. But what I would say is that I remember coming out of lockdown when we went into lockdown, we came out in our first game against Spurs. We looked awful in that game too, and I just think potentially
we looked awful, but at the same time we should have won the game.
No, defensively. Sorry.
Defensively.
So, think about that Bergwijn goal where
horrific.
Maguire.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
They were really poor, and I think we did improve as time went on. And I think it's fair to say that maybe these defenders do, again, obviously need time. I think Maguire's probably slow off the marks. I know he's always slow, but maybe he does need a few game weeks every season to get going.
Well, I think that needs to be said across the board as well. We're not seeing clean sheets at the minute in the Premier League. I think maybe single-figure clean sheets after 30 games or something.
Yeah.
I think last week there was 1-2 clean sheets out of 20 teams. That's unheard of, really. Fantasy football's up the wall because you can't pick a defender, really, because nobody's going to get any points. So I don't think that's exclusive to United at the minute. I think teams are conceding goals across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you surprised Eric Bailly didn't start on Saturday against Brighton?
I was, only because of what Ollie said before the game. He was building him up and talking about him a lot, and then he obviously didn't play him. And I think it would have made sense in many ways, just because obviously Lindelof's had it was horrific in the Palace game, but I think that potentially halfway through the game I was thinking, because Lindelof I actually thought was okay at the start of the Brighton game. I remember him making a few clearances. I remember thinking actually it would have been quite weird if Ollie had dropped Lindelof after one bad game. It would send quite a message.
One, though, is it? Let's be honest.
No, right.
He's had 3 seasons now, and he's still not impressed me.
No, but I mean, he's never been. That's the worst game I've ever seen him against Palace, 100% by miles. And he's not had a performance that the Sevilla game as well, maybe last year. But
which game?
It's the European Euro.
Oh yeah,
European League semi-final. He was bad in that as well.
Yeah, he was,
yeah. He has had bad games for United, but I don't think he's as bad as you do. But I certainly don't think he's the answer either. And I think definitely we have to accept we spent 80 million on Maguire. He is our captain, and Ollie stood by him throughout this whole legal dispute in Greece. He's definitely Ollie's first choice centre back. With that being the case, I like Lindelof. I think he's fine. I think he's better on less centre back, but with it being the case that we're going to be starting Maguire, Bailly would complement him a lot more because he's a lot quicker, he's a lot more confident, and he will challenge as well for those areas.
I remember his pirouette in the box at Chelsea last year.
I know a lot of people don't really rate Bailly, but I really do. I think he's a really, really good centre back, and I know that's something I've always gone on about. He has his moments, but there isn't a centre back in the world that doesn't anymore. Van Dijk's the best centre back in the world. We watched him against Leeds give away.
Yeah, I know.
Bailly is defensively he's very sound. He struggles in a back three. We saw it against PSG and in other games. He does struggle in a back three. But he's good on the ball, which is what you want in modern day.
He is, yeah. He is.
Strong. He's good in the air. He's very, very quick. And I just think all those things considered, you have to say he's a good centre back.
I think
when he's got a run as well, he's great.
But when he's
in and out is the issue.
I know, and that's the case with everybody. You need a run in the team. There's no doubt about it. But I think with the defender, for me, a centre half, I want to feel like he isn't going to make a mistake, even if he is good.
You have to forget that these days, though, Sean. It's not happening.
Well, it is. It is happening. Well, all right. Van Dijk made one mistake on Saturday.
Last night, Arsenal had 2 clean-cut chances. One was offside, it was close, and the other one, he was. I think
the point I'm trying to make is I want to feel like he isn't going to make a mistake, even if he is.
You're only going to get that. You're only going to get that with Van Dijk and maybe Laporte. And I mean, in world football, you're talking them two, and then if you go, I would have said Varane before the City game.
Well, yeah,
not him anymore. And then I don't know. Tell me if you can think maybe this Upamecano's the real deal, but the jury's out. He's only young. I don't know who else is out there.
The guy at Napoli, is it Koulibaly?
Yeah, good player, but I remember making a mistake against Liverpool. Really good centre back. But this is what I'm saying. There's maybe 5 in the world really good centre backs where you would probably feel safe at all times. Generally, these days, goals are scored. They come from mistakes and defenders with the last line of defence.
Definitely. I mean, look at Ferdinand and Vidic. Mistakes were quite common. I mean, less than probably normal, but they still happen. So maybe you're right. Maybe that is just the way. But I've just seen too many from. I think the game last season was it Bournemouth. He came on at half time. His first thing he did was give a penalty away for handball. Literally the first thing he did.
I was talking when we were talking about handball and that was such a harsh handball.
I can't remember it fully now, but it was. That's right.
He had his arm out, but it was here, and so I think I've got a lot of time for Bailly, but what I will say is, with all that being said, he's injury prone, and that means that you can't put your hopes into him. So the hope for United is, because it doesn't sound like we're in the market for a centre back this window, the hope for us is that we get Tonzebe back fit and he is a surprise package, or that Ollie's right about this Mengi, because apparently, he's a top talent. But I know he's only just been brought into the squad. He's not played games. It's going to take time for him to come into the team. Same way did with Greenwood last year. But there is a real need there right now. But the fact that they're not going for a centre back tells me that they must feel confident about one of Axel or Mengi.
Yeah, and look, let's not get too flippant about it. We kept a lot of clean sheets last year. I think we conceded the fewest goals. I can't remember the exact stat now, but we could have conceded the fewest goals in the league by Liverpool, I think. So
I think we were third. I think we conceded 33, and I think there was one other team that had a better defensive record other than Liverpool. Okay. I can't remember who it was.
We went through a run, I think, where we had 11 games in a row where we didn't concede, or in all competitions, something like that. But I think the point I'm making is, statistically, the defence isn't actually terrible. It's okay.
Before we move on, though, the one thing I do want to talk about is a lot of conversations about Wan-Bissaka after that Brighton game. Obviously, it was his first Premier League game. I know he played against Luton, but he did come back, I think, because of COVID. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think he had COVID along with Pogba. But he's come back and clearly not match fit or as fit, because we saw Fozzie meant to start against Palace, but he was exposed at right back because he was making a few poor decisions positionally. And I've seen that before with him when he's tired. I remember talking on a podcast previously. I was at the Liverpool game at Old Trafford last year, and he didn't fall asleep, but he was in between two men. He needs support. He's a really good defender one-on-one, and he's still got a bit to learn with crosses that come in. Brighton played a lot of crosses to his side, and we obviously saw the goal go in that late on in the game. But a lot of the shots Brighton took were from the right-hand side. From their left. Yeah. But what I would say is Greenwood was not tracking back. Pogba wasn't fit and wasn't covering for him either. And then we saw Bruno on that last goal wasn't picking up Solly March for that goal either. Yeah, so as good as Wan-Bissaka is, A, needs to, again, like everyone else, get match fit. But B, I think as good as he is, we need to make sure, particularly in late game scenarios, because we've seen it against Liverpool, we're now seeing it against Brighton this year. He's going to need more support later in the games from midfielders when we're defending the leads, coming in, drop in and help support on those, because teams are doubling up on the back post and we've got to defend better against it. Everyone's focusing on Wan-Bissaka. I think if that was a team problem, not a Wan-Bissaka problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've not got any issues about Wan-Bissaka. He'll like you said, it's his first game back in a couple of months. I don't think he's the biggest of United's defensive worries.
Oh, he's certainly not. He's certainly not.
Yeah. I think one thing I did want to talk about, actually, on the VAR topic we talked about earlier, was the De Gea penalty against Palace.
Oh, yeah.
So
I feel the same way. Sorry to interrupt you there. I feel the same way about the handball on the defenders who've got no way of getting out of it. If you're asking a keeper to wait for the ball to be kicked for them to move off the line, you're asking too much of them, because if they're off the line, fair enough, jumping forward. But if their body is on the line, I think you've got to say, fair enough, of part of their silhouette is on the line, because we've seen Bruno do the hop, skip, jump kick thing, and Jorginho does that too. But
so you've got to guess when they're going to kick the ball.
Yeah, they can stutter their run, and then you've really got to wait until the ball's moved a yard before you can be sure that you should go. So I think we're going to see a lot more penalty conversions this year.
I agree, and I think it was Soccer AM this week that De Gea did an interview with them, and I think he's made the point that the deck is already stacked against goalkeepers on penalties. Yeah, and I didn't really think of it like that, but it really is. Like, the striker gets a free shot from 12 yards. Like, that's an advantage enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, the rule's the rule. Technically, his back foot was off the line first, but it wasn't Jersey Dudek in the Champions League final. He wasn't walking to the 6-yard box.
No.
It's marginal gains.
I think, again, for me, I think what would be fair, just because the keeper has to dive. Premier League, we've talked about penalties before, because you're obviously penalty connoisseur, expert taker. But Premier League players, good Premier League players who practice the technique, will be able to hit the ball hard enough that if the keeper has to wait for the ball to be hit before they move,
Yeah.
there's no chance of the keeper, because if you hit the ball hard enough and put it in the corner, the keeper's got to wait. They're not getting across because the ball moves quicker than the keeper can ever dream of moving.
Exactly.
And so, for me, I think, while I understand that you need to have something that keeps the keeper on the line, I think the way what the solution should potentially be is, rather than saying that the keeper has to have a foot physically on the line, part of the keeper's silhouette being in line with the goal line, so that they're not darting forward. We know that they're on the line. And if they go, because the keeper can go too early too.
Yeah,
So,
of course they can. That's the biggest sin of a goalkeeper, really. That's how Jorginho scores most of his penalties.
Because they wait,
waits for the keeper just to move, and he'll just slot it the other side, and it makes it easy actually for the. There's a line, isn't there? And I don't think it's technically about the keeper going too early. He can go as early as he wants, as long as he's behind the line.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That the rule is if the keeper's feet are off the line.
Yeah.
So if they've moved forward or if they've jumped, and so it doesn't matter whether they're on the line. If both of their feet are off the floor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? So it's got to be literally touching the line.
Yeah.
Not just in line with it. Okay.
No.
Right. Okay.
So I think as long as we have a situation where not the feet, but part of their body is on the line, we can then say with confidence the keeper's not come off the line by a yard or jumped forward in the run-up, and then that way we can be sure that they're going to be on the line and they're not getting an advantage in that way. I just think that's the fair thing to do, personally.
So I think if you do that, you've got to limit how the striker takes a penalty then.
Well, I don't want to see that just because it's been pretty powerful for United with Bruno.
No, I know it has been. You know what I'm saying? A penalty is already a huge advantage for the attacker anyway. Combine that with the way of winning a penalty these days, any touch of the hand is going to be given. Then the keeper can't move, an inch off his goal line. It's almost a certain goal these days, a penalty, barring missing the target.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think maybe that's too much in favour of the attacker. Like, a free shot from 12 yards should be enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many penalties did you really see missed back in, I don't know, Van Nistelrooy's day or Cantona's day, or because the keeper was marginally off the line? There still wasn't many. A penalty was guaranteed goal, more or less.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the stats, but I agree with you. I mean, it will be marginal, the difference, I would imagine. So yeah, I did sympathise with De Gea because I think he needed that moment as well. He had a tough start, and now he's got Henderson sort of over his shoulder.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that De Gea as well. If he makes one of these big saves, it can give him the confidence he needs. Because I think I've said before, I'm convinced that it is his confidence that's gone rather than his ability. And so it was a shame because he probably could have done with that to keep him in the game and kept going. But then obviously that moment's taken away from him, and then we go, Palace score and we're back to square one. So
yeah. I mean, he said, hasn't he, in interviews that he feels as confident as he ever has, and I don't know if that's just chat, but I think
he's not put a foot wrong so far this season. I know we're only 2 games in, but he made a good save at Brighton at the end. Yeah. So I mean,
the thing I'd say about De Gea, I'm never confident about him saving a penalty. I think I could say one for us in his career. I think it was Baines.
Yeah.
I think he's conceded 18 out of 18 in a row, club and country, which is, I can't remember a time when he went the right way. All right, he went the right way on first game of the season against Palace, but he's notoriously dreadful at saving penalties. I can't remember it ever happening.
Again, I'm not. Maybe it is something to be more wary of, given the current climate with the way penalties are being given, like you say. But I don't want to be too harsh on him for that. But yeah,
no. I mean,
I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you are.
Nobody rates a goalkeeper on how good they are at saving penalties, unless you're Tim Krul.
Yeah, okay, he's got really good. Really,
you don't go, oh, Alisson, what a penalty shot stopper. He's just a good goalkeeper. It's been the same throughout history. So, all right, let's finish with the final question. Will United get Jadon Sancho before the end of the window?
What do you think?
I think no.
I've said all along that I think that this is going to be a case where, a bit like Maguire last year, we know how much they want. It's just a case of we're trying to haggle, and then eventually, if they don't bend, then we'll just go and give them the money they want. But what I will say is, I hate having been sort of sucked in by the recent narrative that the United board are putting out about the lack of funds, but having paid a bit more attention to the financial side of things, I do think that unless we sell players, we're not going to sign Sancho. And I was thinking about it as well. We didn't actually sign Maguire until we sold Lukaku for a similar fee last year. And I think that we are going to be in a situation where if we don't shift one or two of those defenders, if we don't shift maybe one of Pereira or Lingard, I can see us being in a situation where they go, we can't justify it at 120 million euros. And I'm really sad because I do think that whilst it is a lot of money to pay in the current climate, I do think he'll probably go for a similar-ish fee to 120 million euros next year. And fair enough, if Dortmund think they can hold out till next year and they want that amount, fair enough to them. But I just worry that we're going to blow a window here to sign one of the. I do think he could be a generational talent, particularly the Premier League because he's English.
Yeah.
You would imagine at some point he's going to come play in the Premier League, so you'd want him to be for United rather than City, Chelsea, Liverpool, whoever it may be. So I really hope that we get the deal done, but again, I can't see it unless we sell. I think at the moment it sounds like the priority at the moment is Telles from Porto, who I've heard good things about. I'm not obviously seeing him, but from what I understand, he's a good attacking left back, and it sounds like we'll get a good deal on him because he's got only a year left in his contract. So if we get him, I'll be happy about that. But I'll be honest, I've said all along I'm going to reserve judgment for United's transfer strategy for the day after the deadline's closed, because whilst it would be great if we were a club that got business done early, we've not been that club for a long time, even in the Ferguson era.
No, and it's not happened.
I think that it's easy to say, oh, we haven't got a director of football and the structure and and I think all those things are true, but I do think it is harder for United to do business just because I do think teams see United coming and they put the fees up, the agents do it, and I just think it does make it all a lot more difficult for us. And at the moment, we've got a lot of players on the books. I don't know what you know about the financial situation, but having read a bit about it, we are in a bit of a sticky one. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that article come out last week about the books and things like that. I didn't really delve too deep into it, but I've always been of the opinion that if they want the money, pay it. Right now it isn't as simple as that. They've got a lot to work out. So
where I will sympathise with the fan base that are really angry about the transfer strategy, if you're directing your hate towards the Glazers, I'd say fair enough, because at the end of the day, with the reason that we're now in this sticky situation is because we've, as a club, made a lot of money, but the money's gone into the pockets of the Glazers. They've taken that money out and it's been paying off the debt that they instilled upon us when they bought us. And again, by all accounts, pardon the pun, until now, we've been a very well-run club financially.
Mm-hmm.
But as it stands, we've got low cash reserves at the moment. We're now in a situation where we're not as powerful as we have been in previous transfer windows, and really we should be capitalising on moments like this where we're the only team available for a player like Jadon Sancho. And if we did get him, I think our attack then is as good as you would wish it to be. I don't think you could then say we're not going to need to sign another attacker for a bit, depending on what you think about Martial as a 9. I'm pro Martial, and I think he will develop that.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind seeing Greenwood get a run at 9. I've got to say.
This is what. Yeah. So sorry. To go on to talk about Sancho, this is why I really want him. Is A, because he's generational talent. B, because I think that he'll naturally play on the right. We've been dying for a right. I don't think we've signed a right winger since Valencia that I can remember. Because Dan James is a left winger and he's played right. And he would give us a rotation option, which is why Donny van der Beek, we should briefly talk about why Donny van der Beek or Baker's is a good signing. But what Sancho would do is it would then mean that Greenwood could then challenge Martial for the 9. And Agarlo's going to go back to China in January. Then it makes sense if we can get Sancho that Greenwood can then float in between those two positions, and we've really got rotation across the 3.
And we've also got potential of a 4-4-2 formation.
Yeah,
play 2 up front.
And this is the thing. So, again, just to say about transfers, quickly summarise. I'd be happy with Telles. We do need a left back. I think we're less desperate for a right back. We need to be thinking over the next year, potentially in January, about a young defensive midfielder, because this season's going to be a real challenge for Matic to play a lot of football.
Have you heard the chat about Kante?
I haven't.
Apparently we're preparing a bid for Kante.
See, I would be on board with that if I was really sure he'd stay fit. But I mean, I'll be on board with it. Sorry, yeah, I'll be on board with it anyway, depending on the fee. But so we do need a DM because I've got no faith in Matic staying fit enough to play 3 games in a week.
Yeah, wrong side of 30 now. He's limited. He's limited now.
McTominay's good, but he's not a defensive midfielder, and he's best in a 2 or a 3. Fred, I like, but again, he's not a defensive midfielder in the traditional sense, not covering the back four. No. We need someone to cover the fullbacks. So I think we're better getting a young one. And whilst I would be happy with Kante in the short term, we're then going to have Kante and Matic on contracts at over 30, and we're then going to. I think he's over 30. I think.
You think?
I think he's about 30. We should check.
I don't know. Let's have a look now.
Check it. It might be 29.
29. All right.
And we signed Matic at 29. I just don't want to get into a situation. I think if we could get like a 23-year-old DM, somebody who could come in, rotate with Matic, learn, and then develop into someone who tracks and covers the fullbacks, that'd be great. Look, I don't want to play with that point. We need Sancho because it takes us up a level, and it's huge for the club. Yeah. What I would say is what I like about the strategy at the moment is we signed Donny van der Beek. It was the right fee. He's a really good player, and
I love that signing.
We need the rotation for Bruno and Pogba. We saw Pogba was out quite a lot last year. We saw that Bruno did burn out towards the end of last season. He got knackered. We need them to rotate, and Donny van der Beek can play. He can play in a central midfield slot, but he is a 10, and that was it. When I saw him play for Ajax, that was what he was best at. Yeah. And I think that if we can get in my dream, we get Telles and maybe this that young right back we were talking about on a previous podcast. You mentioned him, the lad coming through the youth.
Oh yeah. Can't remember his name now. It wasn't Laird, was it?
Yeah. Ethan Laird.
Yeah, Ethan Laird. Right.
If he's as good as we believe, and if we can get Telles, if we can get 2 really good attacking fullbacks, we could potentially play a diamond. If we get my dream DM, but for now Matic, you could play Pogba, Van der Beek, and Fernandes rotating in that diamond with 2 attacking fullbacks, and Martial, Greenwood, essentially Sancho, and Rashford rotating up front. That would be a really good team. We're close, but we're still so close, but yet so far.
Yeah, long way to go.
It's going to be a big week for United, this.
I agree. When does it close at this time next week, or something like that?
I've just.
It doesn't really matter.
I'm pretty sure it's the end of the first week of October. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think
the
so.
9th.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit closer than that actually. I think it's more like the 3rd or 4th.
5th. Monday the 5th. Just checked. So
yeah, I agree with you. It is a big week. So let's re-adjourn this time next week. See where we're at. Let's discuss the business. And yeah, we'll go from there and make a decision on exactly how it's going to pan out, I think. But unless you've got anything more to add, Kieran, I think we'll wrap it just there.
One last quick thing. Do you think we beat Spurs?
Yeah.
I think draw, but cool. I'm
going to have some confidence in United and say we're going to deliver a good performance, bit of a get the season underway performance, get the ball rolling. Nice to get one over Mourinho. Is it home or away?
Home. And as it stands, Son's out and obviously Bale's out, so that'll help. But
I think we've got a chance. I'd like to see it anyway. I'm going to be confident and say I win. Draw for you.
Yeah, because I'm scared of being hurt.
No, I hear you. Kieran, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sean. Been a pleasure.
Pleasure as always. Thank you very much for listening and watching this podcast. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. We're on iTunes. We are on Spotify. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts. You can find us there. You can find us on the website, zipsportsmedia.com. But we'll be back next week with episode 2 of season 3 of A Game of Two Halves.